Hey everyone, Sean here, and welcome back to what pretty much is the last review for Invincible Season 3. Of course, I'll be talking about Episode 8. I'm just going to say right off the bat that this is going to be hard to talk about it without spoiling things for me. So all I can say without spoiling it is very action-packed, quite the heavy hitter, literally, and there's just quite a bit of questions to ask, but very fun, gut wrenching in a way, maybe figuratively and literally. And it's another very much satiating episode. I think this whole entire season, excuse me, has been very satiating, more ways than one. So I'm gonna leave it at that, and I will give it this episode probably a solid 9 out of 10. Once again, I think really though, of course, the animation does hold it back a little bit, but there are moments where the animation does come through. Very good, in fact. But there are limitations to that style of that art they've been sticking with for this long, and it is what it is. But the ambition is there, and I think for the most part, it does kind of live up to, in some ways, to the scale of what was to come in this episode. So that's that. Now the rest of it pretty much is going to be spoilers. Okay. So pretty much this is right after Conquest made his first appearance. Mark is really wanting to hit something out of pure frustration, and Conquest accepts happily. And then they go at it, man. It's just, it is so sweet to see these two meet and duke it out. But it does make me wonder, right? Because the first few actions, you see Mark intentionally, excuse me, push Conquest through all those buildings. So will the news catch that? Will people catch that? Will they know that that part will be on Mark's fault or whatever? That's going to be something to see, I guess, right? Otherwise, so far it looks like most of the people are still on Mark's side, despite Powerplex, who previously has been trying to spread this idea that this is all Mark's fault instead of Omni-Man, right? Because Mark is the one here. And so who are we else to blame, right? And that is, of course, Mark, right? Mark is the finger pointee, right? But anyways, so we'll see about that part. But Mark and Conquest go at it. It's just, man, I love how Conquest, right? The way he expresses his love for combat is it's not so much original, but it's a nice mixture of what we've seen before, right? And the way he brings it to the table is just enough for him to be memorable, right? As Conquest, and this guy really is able to, like, I don't know. It's a little hard to explain, but basically, it's like you love to hate him, and at the same time, you also love him. If that makes sense, it's very weird. It's like it's you obviously see him as like this, well, asshole is lightly putting it, but it's just so insane that it's good, right? Like maybe I'm going a little overboard with it. Maybe I am reaching, but I don't know. I thought it was pretty compelling for what it is, And then especially by the end of Conquest's fight, he he goes monologuing a lot, right? I mean, that's kind of like his shtick right here, is him monologuing quite a bit because he's so strong that he has all the time to talk. So he's like all talk and all bite. almost, or no, pretty much. He's so powerful that I mean, it's kind of like Battle Beast, right? Like he looks for opponents, and he is powerful in his own right. But I'm sure if Conquest and Battle Beast were to duke it out, first off, they would love each other for the sake of the fight, right? They would just as rivals, right? They would love each other because they just have their own flavor of being thirsty for combat. And this guy is just, I would say, another level, man. Like the way he expresses everything. I mean, although at one point when he was talking, like his teeth were perfect, but that's due to the limitations of the art style, right? And the animation sort of style as well to go along with that. But it is what it is. And then his teeth are messed up, and the rest of it. But I thought it was funny, but the it's just the things that he says is definitely what you know sets him apart from someone like Battle Beast. He's like Battle Beast is more like very comparable to Knuckles, right? But Conquest is just a full psycho. He's a full psycho that loves combat and willing to eat flesh that even if they look like him, right? Like he essentially is kind of like a cannibal, but technically, I guess it wouldn't be cannibalism ish since he's a Viltrumite and they're humans or whatever. But yeah, he doesn't even hold back against someone like Oliver, and Oliver at some point helped out Mark, and when he had his hands on Oliver, he was slowly like stretching him out. Man, he was trying to make a stretch Armstrong out of him. You know what I mean? But those moments, right? You can feel every second of it, right? Like the way they went about it. The pacing of this episode in particular was pretty damn good. I at least felt the painstaking seconds that went by when he was ripping slowly Oliver apart. Like the sound effects and everything really come through as well. Just the way the scenes were playing out makes it very believable that Oliver is being ripped apart. Despite, yes, they kind of went a little friendly on that part, but just a little bit, visually. But they could have gone way farther with that. Like no, because they didn't do like X-rays or anything like that. But you can like just feel everything, including with the enhancement of Conquest's words, right? He like literally describes what's happening essentially, and Oliver's screams, right? Very well played by the actor. I forget his name, forgive me, but no, young actor, but very very good in those parts, especially. And speaking of the voicing, right? Jeffrey Dean Morgan, excuse me, did a fantastic job as Conquest. I really wanted Jonathan Banks to be Conquest because it was later that Jonathan Banks was going to make a voice appearance, if that makes sense, a voice appearance in this show somewhere. But it turns out that he is Brit, even though somewhere on another source it was somebody else. But I think for the most part, Jonathan Banks is voicing or was voicing Brit. We'll see about his future work with Brit in a later time. But Dean Morgan here definitely put on the show as Conquest. Definitely has those notes of being Negan and stuff like that. Say what you will, but it works. There's a reason why these actors were cast as these characters. You know, I'm sure the casting director had the ear, right? Like when they read these characters or whatever, including Powerplex, they had a certain person in mind. And Powerplex was another example of that. Very much kind of like Jesse in some ways. I mean, and the Jesse thing does work for Powerplex. Say what you will, but I think it was funny, right? And that's why all the memes blend together with Jesse and Powerplex, right? So it all works. It's funny, I think, in that regard. But point being, him him as Conquest, I think, worked as much as people are going to absolutely compare him to Negan, because Negan is another big character, right? So in Conquest is a big character of his own, and Conquest already did quite a bit, Um, but it is disappointing to see that yes, Conquest is essentially a one and done, but this guy is going to leave a lasting impression. And from what I've read with the synopsis and stuff like that for the comics, yeah, you know, if you know, right? With Conquest, so especially what happens in the end for Conquest, besides the fact that he gets headbutted to death and all that stuff, but the the anguish, right? The somber, the weight, right, really comes through for Mark, and especially when Eve was apparently dead, almost dead. It's just, I don't know. I felt it. I felt the rage that was seething through him. Right. It's just you can hear you can essentially hear that engine that was within Mark. It was about to just rev up to the red line, and man, he just goes at it. He shatters Conquest's robot hand while breaking his own in the process, but unfortunately gets his other hand crushed. But in the end, man, he used his head. you know, that thick skull of his, man, it came in handy at least, in some ways. And just like in the comics, Conquest's face is all messed up, all messed up. It's great. I loved it. I loved every second of the fight. Right, and that's pretty much all it was. It was Invincible versus Conquest, at least most of it anyway. And then by the end, of course, we finally get a proper burial or funeral for Rex. And Rex, while honored, right, Rudy, aka Robot, finally takes the name Rex in the honor of Rex Explode to carry on his legacy, because yeah, he is carrying on his look, and uh, he, well, yes, I mean, the public doesn't know, I guess, that Rudy took Rex's look. He essentially, he did the whole cloning thing. When I'm not going to even talk about that, but and I guess the public, the rest of the superheroes and all that stuff, I'm assuming doesn't know what happened, what really happened, and what he really looks like, except like Cecil and stuff like that, and the rest of the Guardians and all that. It is a little weird because you have Monster Girl, who previously had a little conflict with Rex, and like there's that whole thing about like, oh, I took Rex's look because I thought Monster Girl saw guys like Rex most interesting or something like that. It's just it is weird when you break it down. And Monster Girl still is like, you could have gone up to yourself, blah blah blah, all that stuff. She is looking past that stuff. I don't know. It is a little weird. And now she's like, hugs Rudy slash Rex and kisses him and everything. I love you, all that stuff. She is in love with him now more than ever. And it is weird. This whole thing is definitely strange, uncomfortable to put it one way. But that's because it is fucking weird. But anyway, at least Rex is getting the proper honor, right? Rex was one of the most redeemable heroes in this entire show. He went from this like douchebag asshole to like the one of the most likable characters, I'd say, but without losing the touch, losing the appeal of himself, right? Like he was still himself, but he was very much improving very tastefully, and for him to go out like that, right? While I questioned it a little bit, but while it is still technically unconfirmed of what happened to that Mark variant or the Invincible variant, excuse me, he still sacrificed himself one way or the other. So it is what it is. And at least he's gaining that much. So I think he definitely deserves that. And also nice to hear Robot, talk by the actor who played it's like one of the characters from Star Trek, like the very important one. I forget his names. Like, never mind. I'm getting lost. All right. Anyway, so he is voiced by that actor. He's really cool. So it's nice to hear him once again. Admittedly, Eve, right, tried to have her obituary or something like that or whatever, her words, but she couldn't get it out because it was too hard for her, and she talked about Rex to Mark when Mark tried to catch up to her, right, to check on her and all that. And then Eve is really like expressing herself once again about another part of her past, and she really did like Rex a lot when when she was in that relationship with Rex, despite how much of an asshole he was to her. And when he was still that asshole Rex, she still loved him. And so obviously this loss was really tough on her. And then there's that part when, yes, Mark was smiling because, yeah, Eve almost died, and he was so happy to see her alive like that, right? And so they once again show their love, whatever, right? Made love after that. But speaking of almost dying, Eve, holy shit! I thought she was actually going to die, and then something else happens. But I did not expect for her to come back like that, like in that fashion. So basically, what happened is that, yeah, like she pretty much explained it, right? Like she has these mental blocks put by the scientists because her powers are super. It's too powerful. So they put those as like a safety measure, and but those can only be blocked or taken off when she's experiencing very traumatizing moments and experiences, or basically whenever very important plots happen, right? So it's like a convenient writer's convenience, right? And so these powers show up, and she's able to heal herself. She's able to not only control inorganic material, but sentient matter. So she's essentially semi-immortal in a way, and she can, yes, heal others. She's gonna be a healer, pretty much. There's no questioning that. Absolutely, if she can heal herself, she's gonna heal others. So that means she's going to able to bring back a lot of people. So that could be kind of like an eye roller potentially, but for what it is, it makes sense because she controls the very atoms, right? She controls matter in a very powerful way. She has a high level matter manipulation, so it makes sense, and it's done tastefully enough. It's kind of like time travel, right? It's a tricky thing to write, and if you even screw up a little bit, it's like, yeah, it's kind of, a lot of it gets lost. Whereas when you write a character with matter manipulation like that, or just someone who can control so much, has a lot of potential, it's like kind of like that Superman thing, But there are ways to get around it and make these stories believable. So it'll work. It is possible to find its way while keeping a good balance, but it is also the other way. It's always very possible to kind of feel kind of convenient to have, if you know what I'm saying. But we'll see. We'll see about where Enemy goes. But before that, in that process, she got messed up a lot. Boom, face got fucking broken, jaw just bleh, and then she had her insides ripped out or pierced, ripped out. She got messed up. So she is she may have these powers, but she ain't invincible. Nah. She's human and yet not human at the same time. She got the limited stamina, peak human condition, but still limited, right? And but she has these incredible powers. So I guess it kind of balances out in a way ish. But still, I thought I'd point that out. That's my perspective on that. So all of that taken into account, I mean, yes, meanwhile, we do have a little bit of Debbie. She says sorry about, how she kind of enabled this whole, like, oh, when are your powers coming? When are your powers coming? Such. And now she feels super horrible about it. But Mark is like, no, it's fine. You're still a mom to me, And yeah, I think even from looking from the outside in, I think Debbie was a good character in that, immorally, right? I don't think by any means she is any like horrible mother by any means, at least intentionally anyway. She was it was all unintentional. She thought this was the best way. Nolan, no, to be fair, Nolan kind of blindsided her. I don't know the term, but yeah, who could have seen this coming, right? Who could have seen this whole thing coming after all this, and then especially with the conquest fight? Who would have known? Who would have known, right? So I don't think Debbie is at fault at all. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it, right? The conquest fight, the hospital stuff, and the funeral, and then yes. So there are a couple other scenes that have to be talked about, which is of course, yes, Cecil being Cecil, he wants to have Conquest's body for his use. Whether they will use his body for the Animan or they'll have him talk, right? How do we fight these Viltrumites? And they're gonna have to interrogate the shit out of him for sure. So that's about it. Having to read the comics, or not read the synopsis. Things happen. Let's just put it that way. Things happen. So, all I can say is, damn. Anyway, the other scene was Damien Darkblood makes his return, summons his master, I guess, with a message, right, that there is somebody who can do something for them, blah, blah, blah. So it kind of like foreshadows the return of Damien Darkblood and this master of his, I guess. So we'll see these demons. They'll make their appearance and all that fun stuff. So that's essentially it for the big stuff for episode 8. That's all the spoilers and such like that. But I do want to talk about the series as a whole, right? At least for season 3. I think that this whole season is definitely all about Mark, right? More than ever. And how he is weighing himself with this whole situation, particularly with Omni-Man, right? It's still, weighing. He's still letting the weight rest on his shoulders, so to say. And Mark was trying to kind of redeem himself um, by just doing the good, right? And keeping things white, uh, if you know what I mean. Because he felt bad that he killed Angstrom Levy, right? And so he tried to do the whole "we don't kill" kind of thing, and then same with Debbie. Kind of Debbie definitely is all about not killing, and they try to teach Oliver that, and while yes, that is a good thing to teach, right? But there are times where these people cannot be reasoned with, right? The bad guys, these people cannot be reasoned with, and so you have to do what it takes to completely stop them, and that could mean killing them. And people like Angstrom Levy are gonna keep coming back, possibly doing worse than the last thing. And so Mark has come to realize that that's not good enough, right? Not killing is not good enough. And people like Cecil were trying to kind of like indirectly tell him and imply that, because Cecil understands that. He wanted to be a good guy as well. But he was taught by his previous sort of his director, right? His previous leader, that there are good guys, but there are guys that save the world. Sometimes saving the world can be an ugly process. That's what I've kind of like come to learn as well, right? Uh, somewhere along the way between being a kid to up to this point. Sometimes you got to do things that people are gonna hate you for, but ultimately it will save the world, or it will do the best, right? It's the best outcome. And so, Invincible is kind of teaching that in a way. And sometimes, yeah, man, you gotta, break a few eggs to make an omelet, simply put. If you try to make an omelet with something else, that's not really a true omelet, right? It's an imitation. It's like an omelet, but it's not an omelet. I'm sorry to say, but you gotta break those eggs. How else you gonna get to the yolk? You can't get it without breaking the shell. Um, that's just kind of how I see it. If anyone wants to make another analogy with that, go right ahead. I'm all ears. But that's sort of the analogy I always do, right? A lot of food analogies in my life, but sometimes it'd be simple like that. So, and as dumb as that sounds, but it is what it is. And Invincible, yes, I believe has come to realize that. And maybe on the inside, he thought Cecil was right, but he ain't still talking to him right away, at least, because he implanted that sound device in his head. So I don't blame him for that. Cecil can still be an asshole. You still don't have to like him, but you can't say that he's wrong for thinking that way or feeling that way, because he's got so many years of dealing with bad guys and paranoia and this and that, dealing with people like Nolan. Of course, he's gonna do something like that, right? So that whole situation is kind of like Civil War with the Avengers, right? There's supposed to be no right answer for it, but I think for the most part, most people side with Captain America or something like that. I think I could be wrong, but you can't say one person is wrong or whatever in those situations, because there's no point. There wouldn't be a point to that. It wouldn't be called Avengers Civil War if there is a one clear answer that's right. you know, that's the whole meaning to write these situations, is to show that there are two sides to that sort of argument. And Cecil and Invincible have their own ways of being right, I guess. you know. But you have your own right to have an opinion, right? You can side with one or the other, but does that mean you're right? Does that mean you're wrong? Right? So anyway, I really like this season for showing a lot of things, and it also showed Oliver's growth, right? So first he, saw things black and white as well. He was on the opposite end, right? Because he wanted to kill because obviously, in his eyes, that's the one solution to stop the bad guys, right? Kill people, right? It's the end of everything, right? But sometimes it can go too far, because you can't just kill people because you don't see them. That doesn't mean they don't have like families and people they love and care and all that stuff. You just can't go around killing people. Is definitely what was need to be said, and that I think Debbie implied definitely said that for sure. But killing the Mahler twins, killing or trying to kill Angstrom Levy, um, I think for the most part is the right thing to do because these guys just keep coming back. They never learn their lesson. They're not gonna stop, you know. So yeah, in that world, in that situation, as a superhero, you gotta stop them for good. So Oliver definitely, I think, learned all these in a rather beautiful process, I say, because um, after the situation, right? He made friends, and then when he tried to be a superhero, right? He then started to see the value of human life or just life in general, and really wanted to be helpful, and he knew how to be helpful, no matter what. Like he's not helping just because he wants to, like be a hero and all that stuff. He wants to help because he loves his brother. He loves his family. He wants to. He sees value in life. He knows what's worth protecting, and that's why he really wanted to help Mark. That's why he really wanted to save these people because yeah, it is the right thing to do and all that. And he's not going to just go out and kill every bad guy now, but because he was told about Engstrom Levy, and he probably knew what conquest was just by looking at him. Yeah, like gotta stop him real quick, right? And especially with Engstrom Levy, like he knew about Engstrom Levy thanks to Mark. Probably likely told him about almost killing their mom and Oliver himself. So he knows that he has to be stopped permanently. And and seeing all that, I think Oliver is a pretty good character thus far. Can they screw him up? Absolutely, it's still possible. But at the moment, I think he is written appropriately. Yeah, he's a kid, he's learning. Of course, he's going to be annoying, especially at the first time. But I think in the end, he knows he's growing up real fast, thanks to the Thraxan stuff, But um, he definitely got his ass whooped while doing so. But it is what it is, right? Um, in the end, yeah, he didn't kill Powerplex, but he is willing to. I'm sure he was willing to do that to Conquest if he could. And yeah, like he knew that Mark needed the help he needed and such like that. While yes, Mark is just trying to protect his brother, blah blah blah. But yeah, um, that man, that part was pretty heavy, especially with Adam Eve versus Conquest. She gave it her all. The air density thing and all that stuff was pretty cool. Could she have be a little more creative? Sure, but the air density, all that stuff, she gave it her all, and boy, she got messed up for sure in the process. And then the whole revival thing definitely happened. Um, what else? There was yes, and then the Angstrom Levy stuff. There was other things I did want to mention, which were certain parts. Which was that unfortunately episode 7 leave out a lot of parts of the Invincible War, including Tech Jacket and even the crossover characters, which is a little more understandable because copyright, all that stuff. The werewolf that was fighting Viltrum Mark was in fact supposed to be Spawn. That's why Mark was like, "I killed you before," like blah blah blah, all that stuff. That was supposed to be Spawn, and then Spawn comes out alive, I guess, quote unquote. But it is disappointing to have characters even within the Invincible universe. I think Tech Jacket is supposed to be an Invincible original character, right? Well, if that's the case, that's pretty disappointing. But yeah, so because they definitely rushed that part. I think that's definitely one of the biggest weaknesses in this season was a lack of a strong setup. They definitely just rushed it through. They definitely could have combined certain things in one episode, but then they also need to expand certain parts of these sagas or arcs or whatever, which included the Invincible War. Invincible War could have easily been at least 2 episodes, 3 episodes. Maybe 4 is taking it a little too far, but then again, there's a lot that went on. But there are also parts that do happen very briefly, just like in the comics. So it is appropriate, but also not appropriate. So it's a quite the mixed bag. So that's why knowing that does dock it a little bit. But other than that, it was still a good episode. But for what was given to us, but still a little disappointing, at least to some degree. Meanwhile, you got the Martian bug things taking over still. Previously, it did come back. It whatchamacall, went inside the original astronaut guy that James Smith took the identity from, right? And then I think he spat him out, and then it took over him, and now they're multiplying underground, and it looks like they're about to just about ready to bring an uprise on the surface level, right? So we'll see about how that part of the saga goes. So yeah, that's about it for the spoilers for episode 8. I mean, there's only actually only a few scenes, but man, it is heavy, it is dense, it is a lot of action, high energy, gut wrenching, both ways, and I think it's a pretty good conclusion for season 3. So I'm definitely looking forward to what is to come for the rest of it, man. I'm all for it. I'm ready. I can't wait for more Battle Beasts. Can't wait for more Alan, Omni-Man, Invincible, Oliver, the rest of the Viltrumite Empire, Thrag, right? All that stuff. Anissa, and the rest of the cast. It's going to be pretty good, I think. From where it's going, I think it's going to be pretty good. Hopefully, they can kind of iron out the animation stuff. I think that's really the only thing that's a huge major con for this season as well. There's just something about that, the styling or the animation quality kind of took a hit in comparison to before. But yeah, it's again, it's the limitations of that sort of style. Like, yes, it does get the job done, and it looks nice, but it does limit the what could have been for these fight scenes. But it is what it is. I still liked it. It's still, the weight was still there. The the scale, right? It still fell. So I'll give it a pass. But hopefully in the future they'll find a way to improve it. And hopefully, it doesn't feel rushed like some of these parts. So, anyways, if I were to give this entire season a rating, I think this is a solid 8. It's still, the imperfections are still there, of course, but the storytelling, the characters, the action, all that stuff is still great. I think this was a pretty good balance overall. I think episode 5 was really probably the weakest one. I don't know. I mean, because um, all we need to know is that, hey, I mean, the dragon, right? But oh yeah, and Mark and Eve are together. They're trying to start a business. That's about it. Not too much stuff going on. Oh yeah, the side stories. But anyway, yeah. And then, oh yeah, shrinking Ray, poor shrinking Ray. Ray was just starting to really get things going with Rex, but Rex died a hero. So, bam. That's all there is to it, and it is pretty sad. It is going. It's not going to be the same without Rex in more ways than one. So yeah, what do you guys think of season 8? For those who stuck around for the review, really like to hear you guys' thoughts, because I definitely enjoyed it. For season 8, especially this last episode, very cool. What you guys thought of Conquest and all that in between? Like and subscribe for more videos like this. Really do appreciate it because it is helpful. So this has been my review for episode 8 of season 3 for Invincible, and mentioning all the other stuff too as a whole. Again, it's a pretty solid 8 out of 10, maybe 8.5, but let's just leave it at 8 for now. And that's pretty much all I got. So thank you very much, and hope to see you all in the next one. Ciao now.